guitar, a cheap microphone and an old guitar. I'm a big star in my local bar with a cheap microphone and an old guitar. Oh, I know I never go. Oh, well, it helps to soothe my soul. Still, I can get on the highway a few times a year. Throw the gear in the bin in a rental van and roll on out of here. Never stop dreaming about the big time, oh, but the small time suits us fine. Never get rich, but it scratches that itch and it pays for the gas and the beer. Got a cheap microphone and an old guitar, a cheap microphone and an old guitar. I'm a big star in my local bar with a cheap microphone and an old guitar. Oh, I know I never go low. Oh, it helps to soothe my soul.
It's Friday. I mean, not really. It's Wednesday, but it feels like Friday. It's June 30th. Welcome to this episode of Real Talk. Tomorrow, July 1st, we will be observing the stat. And then the whole team, we looked at each other in the eyes and said, we're obviously not coming in on Friday, right? We're not coming in on Friday. So that means it's a short week for Real Talk. It means that today's show is going to meet the already raised bar that has been established by producer Sarah Hoyles. What a show yesterday. Unbelievable. I know that it was a difficult show for some of you to access for a large portion of the day. And that's directly my fault because our interview with Captain Paul Watson, the founder of Sea Shepherd, unbelievable. And by the way, Brent Butt, founder, star, executive producer, legend behind Corner Gas, also on the show yesterday. Amazing. The podcasted episode of Real Talk for Tuesday, June 29th contains the entire conversation. The YouTube version, which when you look at it, you're like yesterday, several of you emailed in and said, why are you shut down? What happened with YouTube? Here's basically what happened. I was like, we've got to show video of Captain Paul Watson and these Sea Shepherd ships ramming poachers. We have to show it. These guys that are out there poaching whales and dolphins and dragging these massive nets. Well, you listen to the interview, you'll know what we're talking about, especially on the podcast. But also, there's nothing like a video of huge ocean vessels. What did he say? How much did he say that they weighed yesterday? Wasn't it something like, it was something wild, like 700,000 tons, or he said some number that was, I couldn't even wrap my mind around it.
Yeah, 700 something.
It was like
times.
seven. It was some
multiple of that.
Some number where you're like,
it doesn't really matter because you can't even fathom.
You can't even process
exactly.
it. I'm like, that weighs even more than me after a year of pandemic eating, which is like just an enormous amount of fat shaming is okay if it's you. It's okay if it's you. So anyway, but I'm like, we have to show video because there's nothing quite like on the angry open ocean. These two ships just ramming into one another. And Sarah and Sam both were like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, yeah. And then sure enough, right away, YouTube was like, nope. And Discovery Channel didn't like it. And we had to cut the episode up and repost it. And it was a huge hassle. And it's all on me. But I've got to say, that interview, especially the one with Paul Watson, Brent Butt was cool and great. And there was great insight from other guests. But Paul had our undivided attention for about 45 minutes yesterday, which was very cool. So make sure you check that out. Today's show, of course, is presented by the team at Bitcoin Well, as is the case each and every morning. The team at Bitcoin Well's got a lot on their plate right now. They've got this big downtown location they're getting set to move into, something like 30,000 square feet. It's a former grocery store, to give you an idea. So that side is growing. And then they're going public, which is also a really big deal. And then, of course, they, like everybody else, they're working to manage and understand and maximize the potential of these big swings. And the crypto market right now is all over the place. If you're trying to make sense of it, you want it explained in plain language, trust me, if I can understand it, you'll be able to understand it from the team at Bitcoin Well. You'll find them under the sponsors page at ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
I'm not sure what you do or what your morning routine is, but for me, one of the first things I do when I wake up is, and maybe this is somewhat unfortunate. This wouldn't have been the way that it always was. But when I wake up, I check to see what's going on Twitter. Like if all hell is breaking loose and if we need to change who we're talking to on the show, or we need to reflect a story that's developing, we need to make sure. So I was up early today. I was up really early today, somewhat heat related, in the 5 o'clock hour, which is not always ideal. And I thought, okay, well, let's take a spin at what's going on. And I see it's somewhat unusual that a number is trending. Now, numbers have been trending recently for really heartbreaking reasons. For infuriating reasons. We're going to be talking to journalist Anna Mckenzie in just a moment from Indiginews. That's where she's written this piece on what settlers can do, or what non-Indigenous people can do right now in the spirit of reconciliation. I know that this is something that a lot of people are talking about and processing leading up to tomorrow, July 1st, Canada Day, or if you're in Alberta, Freedom Day, as it's being called. It's Freedom Day. Hey, it's an improvement. It was Dominion Day from Alberta's premier last year. Now he's calling it Freedom Day. Maybe by next year, he'll call it what everybody else calls it. Maybe he'll call it Canada Day next year. We don't know. But some people you can deny it all you like. July 1st is going to be a huge day for a lot of people based on, it has nothing to do with Canada Day. For a lot of people, July 1st, the mask mandate drops in some municipalities, some jurisdictions. Alberta opens up again. I'm saying, you can hear it in my voice. I'm a little cautious. I
can hear the air quotes, definitely.
Yeah, but there are business owners and restaurateurs and people and those eager to socialize and those that already everybody that lost last summer, in a way. I'm being dramatic. The summer still happened. People still made great memories, but it was different. You're now into the stages of where you've got people celebrating birthdays that have now sacrificed 2 birthday parties in a row, right? The pandemic's gone for more than 12 months. So I'm just saying there is exhaustion. People are sick of it. Now, you're going to write in, someone right now on Twitter is going to say, Jasperson, hey, listen, but we've come this far, and what are you talking about? And it's too soon, but please, let's ease back, and I just want to see my grandma, and I don't need to go to the Stampede, and why are you using hey, I'm just saying. For a lot of people, July 1st is big because they can finally get back on the patio or play Frisbee golf, and there's going to be that element of normalcy again. Maybe they get the softball team back together.
Well, there's this great video. It's like a little teeny tiny meme where a lady sings, the pandemic is not over just because you're over it.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I realized July 1st, I don't think that's any mistake that's when the mask mandate drops.
I was going to say there's no mistakes in politics. There's plenty of mistakes in politics. But there's no decisions on timing made without due consideration. You think it was a mistake that cannabis was legalized on the anniversary of Gord Downey's passing? I don't think so. There's another one, interesting one for you.
Whoa, I didn't even consider that.
But I think you're right. I think that the Alberta government and Alberta's premier was. I think politically it's an astute move to tie it to July 1st. I think that part makes sense. To start calling it Freedom Day is an interesting one, but whatever. There's other things to get upset about.
And last summer, people can say that they lost last summer, but I would say that people gained last summer because people were outside actually like...
Well, that's because you're an optimist.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a compliment.
Is it?
Yeah, you're an optimist working in media, which is a little bit, potentially problematic.
Very problematic.
We expect a certain degree of cynicism, a healthy cynicism to drive our editorial process. So back to me sweating. This is just a bad image. At 5:40 in the morning, waking up, checking Twitter, and on the serious side, I see the numbers that have been trending over the past few weeks, 215, 751, 180, 183, like these numbers, we all know what they are. I don't even have to provide context. They've been heartbreaking and for some people conceptually absolutely people's nuclear bombs are going off in people's minds when it comes to their perception of their understanding of what Canada has been. What an amazing conversation yesterday with Fatima Syed, who joined us 10 years ago. She and her family immigrated here from Pakistan. She's written a wonderfully moving piece in Chatelaine, and she joined us to talk about it, explaining how her understanding of Canada and now the way that she's processing her role here as a Canadian, as a Muslim woman, as an immigrant. Just really powerful stuff.
I really appreciated her the statement that she said that it's because she loves
Yes.
Canada.
She said, as a proud Canadian,
That's what it was.
in talking about her plans for Canada Day, right? She says, as a proud Canadian, and then what she said, basically, I'm going to ask people to reflect and take pause. And
No. Yes. But it was so poignant. I'm just going to pull.
well, my point just being that she didn't imply that the only way to be a proud Canadian tomorrow is to blast off a bunch of fireworks, right?
It's because I love this country that I'm not celebrating it.
Yeah.
Not my words, but Fatima.
Yeah. So we're going to be getting to some of your emails today, but sometimes you just want to let a comment like that just simmer for a sec. Mick Fury's written in. I'm going to share a photo from them about what their family's doing with their Canada flag tomorrow. It's not disrespectful. As a matter of fact, I think it's beautiful. Why don't I just show it now? Sam, do you care? Can I just show this now? Yeah, we can pivot. We'll get to Anna Mckenzie in just a quick second here, and then I'll finish my thought on the numbers. But this is what the McFury family's doing for tomorrow. They call it, this is our flag thinly veiled. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll describe it for you. McFury says, when we put up our flag this year for Canada Day, we added an orange veil in front of it. You can still see the maple leaf. You can still see the flag. It's a powerful image. Says, my children, aged 11 and 13, understood the meaning and the symbolism it conveyed. No longer can we pretend our nation is perfect. It is veiled by the pain and suffering of victims and survivors of cultural genocide. When we store the flag on Friday, the veil will go with it. And this will be our display every year from now on. That from McFury. We've got some other emails from you about Canada Day and tomorrow and how you will observe it or not, whether or not you will cancel it, so to speak, some of the things you're wrestling with. A couple of those emails are in Trash Talk, which is coming early today, of course, because this is the last show of our broadcast week. Before we check in with Anna Mckenzie, I want to remind you that this show and the hashtag RealTalkRJ is powered by the team at Park Power. If you visit their website right now, parkpower.ca, not only will you get some great tips on how to manage this heat and approach it from their perspective, they got information on things like rolling blackouts and your own energy, sustainability, and security within your own four walls. I mean, really great resources on the website at parkpower.ca. Also, the promo code 2021-RealTalk gets you $70 off your first bill, commercial or residential, electricity, internet, and natural gas with Park Power. The team at Alta Storage is ready to take the stress out of your move this summer. They've got these pod-style moving containers. These are the ones that everybody is so grateful for. When it, you remember back in the day when they'd have these big 18-wheelers idling outside your home, and you're trying to get it loaded up as quickly as possible because it's an inconvenience for the whole neighborhood. And never mind the fact that you don't even really get to say goodbye to your house. You're rushing, not with Alta Moving and Storage. You move at your convenient pace. They accommodate the plan that you want to make to keep you happy at altastorage.ca. Make sure you let them know that Real Talk sent you. Also, a big shout out to the team at coming up. Positive Reflections on Monday. This is coming up. This is kind of how we start our week off on the right foot. Mondays is going to be great. Some of you are already sending in your emails to talk at ryanjesperson.com, where you're finding your joy these days. What's filling your bucket, so to speak? Check this out. I love this from their Instagram account. This was posted just yesterday. The future is now, friends. This is the Tesla Model S. What is it, Sam? The Founders Edition?
Founders Edition.
The
Founders Series, pardon me.
The Founders Series. I wonder what that comes with that the other Tesla model, because the Model S is kind of like the sexy, that's the sedan that you want to...
Elon built it himself.
He actually turned the wrenches.
Yeah.
That's in his spare time.
Right.
There you have it. This Tesla powered by the solar installation behind it. Look at that. This is Kubi Energy making it happen. Of course, they're Tesla certified. You can learn more about what that means at kubienergy.ca. We keep it real here on the show, and you do too, audience members, and that's why your emails have always meant so much to us, because you cut through all the BS and you tell us how you're feeling, what's on your heart. Many of you have communicated with us that this July 1st obviously feels differently to you, and you're trying to find meaningful ways to communicate that, to observe that, respecting Indigenous people, in respecting your fellow Canadians, and of course, respecting the moment the nation finds itself in right now. In a way, it's the subject matter of a piece just published by journalist Anna Mckenzie for Indiginews. We're going to get into it here. Non-Indigenous people is what you can do right now. Anna is a journalist with APTN and Indiginews, and joins us now out in you're in is this Nanaimo? Is that Nanaimo, BC, where we're talking to you from this morning, Anna?
Yeah, I'm speaking to you today from the unceded homelands of the Nanaimo First Nation, also known as Nanaimo, BC.
Thank you so much for making time for us. You tweeted in promoting your appearance on this show, which we appreciate, that this was actually going to be your first moment of offering a public comment since the discovery, or rather, let me say the specifics of these heartbreaking discoveries, the Cowessess First Nation making the announcement of 751 unmarked graves of children near a residential school. Have your first media appearance today, is that intentional in a sense? Have you been taking pause? Have you been taking a moment? How have you personally been processing this?
Well, it's been a really difficult couple of days, and I've definitely just taken the time to give myself and my family some space, not to put the pressure on for writing stories. Hearing the news out of the Cowessess First Nation, it just was re-traumatizing all over again in the same way the news was out of the Kamloops Indian Residential School out of the Kamloops area. So, there's just a lot of just terror and re-traumatization in my own family, and really hard memories coming to the surface, and a lot of truth telling. So it's just been really important for me to make space for that. And I have 3 little kids as well, so they're always my priority. And so I've just been attempting to focus on self-care and caring for my little ones. And the heat has just made us all just kind of take pause and to just stop. Like, we actually can't really do anything other than, go swim in the river, which has been really lovely.
Yeah.
But I've been gearing up to getting back to writing and back to my work today.
Well, we're grateful for your time and looking forward to hearing your perspective. You're so right about that heat. I think there's this, there's the pandemic that obviously is contributing to some, ability to move or gather or get out, and the hesitation, and even the physicality of what a mask does with regards to, I don't know, overall psyche, I think, and even an outward display of emotion. And then you've got the heat, and then you've got this slow, I say this respectfully, this slow drip of heartbreaking headlines, one after the other, and I almost feel like some are overshadowing others. In other words, that if it just becomes a numbers game, people aren't realizing and recognizing, and I think most people do, I hope, but these are names, these are children, these are people, these are human beings, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. And all of this culminating in a sense of, I feel like everybody is just on their heels a little bit, regardless of perspective or background. Many people experiencing this in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great analogy, a slow drip. And people have been reaching out to me asking what they can do and what am I going to do, because the news isn't going to stop anytime soon. There are over 100 former residential schools in Canada, and we've got day schools, Indian hospitals, the continuation of the horrors in the child welfare system. So there's a lot of work to be done right now in terms of unpacking the long history that Canada has with colonization and perpetuating genocide on Indigenous people. So it's not just an outward, reconciliation, it's an internal reconciliation thing as well. I feel like a lot of Canadians are, for the first time, having their identity shaken to its core. And with this truth sharing, there's a lot of people that are looking for answers. what can I do? How come I didn't know? Did the education system fail us? And so that sort of prompted Jacqueline Ronson at the Discourse and myself to just do a quick turnaround story. Here's 7 things that you can do as a non-Indigenous person, as a settler Canadian, as a newcomer to Canada. Here's 7 things that you can do right now to step up to support Indigenous people in a good way. Because we have the infrastructure in place already to support our people. We definitely, need all the support we can get during this time, but this is not new for us. We've known about unmarked grave sites at former residential schools. They've been spoken within our families. They've been shared with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's one of the calls to action. So this is not new for us, but it is new, I feel like, for a lot of Canadians.
Yeah, I think you're right, or at least the specifics. I think that, we've heard, if I can sort of summarize, dozens or hundreds of emails into one sentiment, it's that I think I knew about residential schools in the sense that there was an ugly part to Canada's history. I've heard people talk about them. I think I knew that there had been allegations of abuse and that some children had died. But I think that generally speaking, non-Indigenous people in Canada are saying, we had no idea that it was like in the hundreds per location, unmarked, calloused, like sort of buried out in the soccer field type idea. I think that has been far from a revelation for Indigenous people. I mean, Ian Hannah-Mansing, a good friend of mine and a remarkable journalist for CBC, The National, spoke with the chief Cowessess First Nation. He said, I recommend everybody watch that interview. Chief out there said, hey, as kids, we were told stay on the pathways, like that this was, there were graves here. And that was known, but even they did not know. He said he said that he was mentally preparing himself. And I don't know if you saw that interview, but he said they bought surveyor's tape or these little flags to mark the graves as they took the ground radar. And he said they bought 300 of them because that's sort of where he had estimated that the number would stop. And he said that they realized very early, looking at the square meters they were covering, they ran out of flags. I mean, when he told that story, my heart just shattered. On this, though, here you are, and we'll talk about these 7 things that you've identified that non-Indigenous people can do, and it's an amazing thing that you've done, and I'm grateful for it, and we will all benefit from hearing this from you. But there's also, I want to have really meaningful conversation with you about the assertion that it's not up to Indigenous people to help non-Indigenous people process their feelings and understand this right now. It puts a real... you talk about re-traumatizing. It puts a real stress or potential stress on survivors and storytellers, elders, and the like.
Yeah, absolutely. So the intergenerational trauma that a lot of people are feeling right now, a lot of Indigenous people are feeling right now, it's palpable. And we're working, I know I can speak for myself, I'm working through a lot. And there's often this saying that we are the 7th generation or we are the 8th fire. And I've just had to come to the realization that, actually, no, I'm not the 7th generation. I'm the 2nd because my dad went to residential school. Both my grandparents on my father's side went to residential school. My grandpa also survived a sanatorium and survived tuberculosis and had 1 lung. So there's a lot of these stories that, we've told internally within our own families that have caused me a lot of vicarious trauma. And I'm trying to unpack and do the work so I don't pass on a lot of that hardship to my children. But what I'm really grappling with right now is how am I going to have those conversations with my little ones who are 8, 4, and 2? How do I explain to them at some point in their lives that this is something that their grandpa has gone through and their great aunties and uncles? And similarly with here on our home territories in Stanemo, there's a lot of intergenerational trauma that's been caused by an Indian hospital. And there's a number of residential schools here on Vancouver Island. So there's a lot of work to be done in terms of healing. And so it's really important for non-Indigenous people to understand how they can support in a good way that's not taxing on our energy during this time.
Anna, another one for you to keep an eye on. I'm sure it's on your radar already, but Lorelei Mullings from Enoch Cree Nation has just recently, in the past number of hours, at the site of the former Charles Camsell Hospital, which saw many Inuit patients over the years. I mean, there's really a dark history with the Capsule Hospital. She's just set up a protest there. There's currently a development going on there, and she's said that she wants to see meaningful action here with regards to a stop work order and investigation there. So that's another one to keep an eye on right here in our Treaty 7 in Edmonton right now. Let's talk about your piece. I mean, there's really valuable perspectives here on, I think, as tomorrow and July 1st on Canada Day, a lot of people are going to be looking for meaningful ways to express how they're feeling right now. And I think that you've provided a great resource. Again, we're referencing your piece at Indiginews.com. Shall we go through these one by one? Why don't we? Why don't I tee up the first thing you say that we can do? We've talked to the remarkable team at the Indian Residential School Survivors Society. Just an absolutely unbelievable. What they've been doing over the past number of decades is remarkable, but especially important, I think, right now. You say that the biggest thing people can do, or at least number one on your list, is to donate to organizations supporting survivors and their families.
Yeah, like I mentioned, we have the infrastructure to be able to support folks that are needing that extra guidance during this really difficult time, Indigenous people that are experiencing trauma or re-traumatization. So I think the quickest thing that people can do is just to donate. If you're wanting something very quickly to take action, donating to those organizations that are providing the culturally and trauma-informed supports that our people need right now.
Your second one, I think, is an assignment that I think many people are taking meaningfully right now, which is to simply learn about, to educate yourself about the residential school system and its ongoing impacts. And I like that you clarify that.
Yeah, our education system in Canada has failed us. So it's up to us. It's up to Canadians right now to really leverage this moment in time and to learn about the 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. This came out in 2015. There was a lot of hard work and stories shared by survivors to put together this document. So really, there's just so much information there that people can engage with. And there's a child-friendly version as well. Cindy Blackstock mentioned it, but there is, I believe, on the First Nations Caring Society website, you can find resources for being able to have a child-friendly version to walk through those calls to action.
Yeah, absolutely. Sharon's right, by the way, keeping me on my toes here, pointing out, quite rightfully so. Sharon, I think I've done 150 land acknowledgements with events I've hosted. Treaty 6 territory, of course, in Edmonton. Hosted an event where Treaty 7 acknowledgement in Calgary over the weekend. Regardless, number 3, call on your MP. Your member of parliament. I'm going to include, you say, other elected representatives. I'm going to include your members of the Legislative Assembly regarding, and of course, municipal representatives as well, regarding taking action. What specifically would you like to see? A focused correspondence to elected officials. What would it look like?
Oh, gosh, that's a great question. Yeah, to fulfill the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission at this time, supporting nations that are wanting to seek the bodies of children near former residential schools, day schools, Indian hospitals, putting more support into funding for resources, for counseling, et cetera, to support our people during this time. But as a child welfare reporter and former outreach worker for Indigenous youth in care, I think that supporting our young people that are bearing the brunt of this intergenerational trauma and colonization the most really need our support. So calling on your elected representatives to address the overrepresentation of Indigenous children in the foster care system, because there's a lot of data and there's a lot of information that really connects the foster care system being the new residential school system.
You, for those that are watching this on YouTube, and we'll sort of describe it for everybody that's going to listen to this on the podcast, but you've included this graph in your information. Again, people can check out Indiginews.com. But I mean, Anna, this is striking. 7.7%, that would be the representation of Indigenous children in Canada's child population. This according to census in 2016, by the way. These numbers are about 5 years old. But when it comes to children in foster care, you reiterate here, you point out to us that it's more than half, more than 52%.
Yeah, in my home province, my home territory in Manitoba, it's actually closer to 80%. And there's a lot of systemic connections as to why that is. A lot of it's linked to poverty, intergenerational trauma that are directly linked from residential schools. So we're still in the thick of it right now with having our children apprehended and growing up in non-Indigenous homes.
Amazing. If you're just tuning in, if you're streaming this live on the Mixlr audio app, we're talking to journalist Anna Mckenzie. Her piece, Non-Indigenous People, Here's What You Can Do Right Now. And she gives us 7 things that we can focus on. Donate, learn about the school system, fuck that. Whatever you want to call this. It was not a school system. Number 3, call on your MP and other elected representatives. Number 4, demand action from the Catholic Church. There's talk that there could be an apology from the Pope later this summer. What would you like to see at a local level? What would you like to see from the Vatican?
I mean, just apologize. Like, I know a lot of people's faith is really shaken to its core right now, but I just don't understand why a meaningful apology would be so hard to achieve. I know there's a convoy of Indigenous leadership heading over to the Vatican to continue to put pressure. But for those in the Indigenous community that have faith, I feel like it would just be so meaningful and a step in the right direction. And that just being a first step, moving forward, the church needs to really step up in terms of supporting First Nations, Métis and Inuit people, truth sharing, as well as support in locating our children that are missing.
Anna, do you have I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but we were talking yesterday about the number of arsons that police are investigating, RCMP are investigating right now, specifically Catholic churches or houses of worship. Others have been, if you want to say defaced, I think there's a very powerful graffiti, I'm going to call it an art installation, on a Catholic church in Saskatoon that read, "We Were Children." What's your take on that?
I really go back and forth, to be honest. Like, I remember the very first time I went to the Kamloops former Kamloops Indian residential school. I went there for work and had a meeting and didn't know that it was a residential school, and went into the basement and was like in the middle of this meeting when I found out. And just, I remember the first thing I thought about was like, I want to burn this place to the ground. Like, that anger was just so real living within my body. So when I read that churches are burning down, the part of me feels like a sense of reconciliation, or like a sense of healing. But I do know that there are people in the Indigenous community that have faith, and those places are spaces of faith for them, and where they draw strength from. So for me, I kind of ping pong ball back and forth, like what is the right thing to do. And yeah, it's horrible. I'm glad that nobody got hurt, but at the same time, there's something to burning it to the ground.
Anna Mckenzie, with 7, can I call them calls to action? Why not? I like it. Calls to action for non-Indigenous people in Canada. Prioritize the safety of survivors and their families when sharing this story and others like it. I so appreciate that our conversation today began on a really personal note. I'm so appreciative that you shared with us how your family has been taking time to make space here. What does that look like in the bigger picture of prioritizing safety of survivors and families when discussing or sharing stories like this?
Yeah, just making sure that whoever you're speaking with, if they have, if they're sharing part of their story with you, making sure they have a care plan, support system, checking in with them afterwards. This is especially true for journalists who are seeking and asking questions about the residential school. There are lots of stories already in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's reports that can be drawn upon rather than re-traumatizing folks. But there are people that want to share their stories, and it's really, really important right now because there are a lot of people that are relapsing or re-entering their trauma that have been triggered by these recent discoveries. So yeah, just making sure that there's a care plan and that you're able to check in with people afterwards, and sharing those resources, those critical phone numbers that are on call 24/7 for people that need that extra support.
As mentioned, I spoke with Fatima Syed yesterday. She's vice president of the Canadian Association of Journalists, and we talked about the onus on journalists to, in some circumstances, completely, adopt new principles or new understandings around trauma-based reporting. For some journalists, especially maybe earlier in their careers, this will be a first. How would you assess how Canada's, it's a big wide swath I'm asking you to comment on, but how have Canada's journalists and storytellers been doing with this?
Well, Kelsey Kilana, who's my colleague at Indiginews, has really, really taken a leadership role in this. She has relations that went to the Kamloops Indian Residential School. So she's developing a trauma-informed reporting guide, because it feels like the entire media world has been knocking on our door asking us how do we report on this in a good way. So all of a sudden the world needs trauma-informed reporting from an Indigenous lens, from an Indigenous storyteller's lens. And it just so happens that leading up to this, our newsroom became quite a bit smaller due to funding cuts. So it's, fallen on the shoulders of Kelsey, of myself, of our managing editor, Emily Gilpin, and Athena Bonneau. So we've been trying to, piece together information to, give out to journalists. And a reporter from the New York Times, I've been consulting with, like, how to report on this issue. And that really goes back to, in my mind, the real disconnect and lack of education that people just have about Indigenous peoples in so-called Canada. Like, there is just like this huge gap, this huge disconnect. And we need to be having really culturally informed, trauma-informed conversations that are uplifting Indigenous peoples and Indigenous voices without re-traumatizing us, and having the narrative be that we are only defined by our hardship and only defined by our trauma.
That's such a great point. One of our audience members saying too, we need more Indigenous people in visible and prominent roles in media telling these stories, which I think everyone would agree with. 6 and 7 work well together, I think, most especially when it comes to people that are going to gather tomorrow, people that are going to be together tomorrow. In your piece, to wrap it up, talk to non-Indigenous friends, family, and children about the residential school system and its ongoing impacts, and attend memorial events where non-Indigenous people are invited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are events happening right now. They're not anti-Canada Day protests. They're events to gather for Canadians to show support for Indigenous people during this time of collective grief. I think it's really important. This is a moment in time where people can really take this one day and to showcase in solidarity that we're all grieving this together. And I just think it would be a really great show of support. I love that Canadian flag with the orange veil over top of it. I think that sentiments like that are so meaningful because for me, I actually I'm dreading Canada Day tomorrow. I'm dreading fireworks. I'm dreading people that are going to be celebrating while, I'm sitting here with all of this trauma, and my family's sitting here with all of this trauma in this heat. So I think there's going to be a lot of healing work that will be happening tomorrow, but just so Canadians know, there's also going to be a lot of pain. So I've put out a personal appeal on my social media channels to just take the time to bear witness to this grief, and collectively let's move forward in a good way.
I'm honored to have welcomed you to the show today. I'm so grateful for your perspective. It really means a lot to us. And you're speaking from a position, obviously, of a firsthand experience. You yourself as an Indigenous woman, as a journalist, as a future lawyer, by the way, as a mom, as a granddaughter. I mean, all of these things have really. I mean, you've got a real way of I think pushing people in a direction in very compelling fashion And I think right now people are looking for that. And I can feel it. And people are telling us that. And they're sending us emails saying that. Like some people literally, Anna, it's been amazing. We'll get emails from people that are one line that just say, my heart is, the subject line will say like 215 or 751 or something. And it will just say, my heart is broken. What can I do? And that to me is like your piece at Indiginews.com is one that just that speaks right to it. And I'm grateful for it. And I'm thankful that you've joined us this morning.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me to share.
You bet. You can follow Anna. That's Anna Mckenzie on social media. Just you can take a look at, of course, the Real Talk RJ Twitter account. It's brand new, by the way. Thanks to those of you that have followed. For those of you that haven't, make sure you follow that. That account is maintained by our editorial producer, Sarah Hoyles, who uses it to provide updates on the show, content, highlights, links, and the like. And of course, you can follow Anna based on that link. Some of you have been talking about the Catholic Church that was burned down last night in Morinville, Alberta. I'll credit the CBC here. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see this photo. This was the Catholic Church in Morinville, Alberta, relatively close to Edmonton. Burned to the ground last night. A number of arsons across the country, in particular, it seems, in Western Canada, but a number of arsons over the past week or two. And it's prompted an email from an audience member, Lauren, who I happen to know is a retired fire chief. And Lauren's got a big heart and a proud first responder for a lot of years, saved a lot of lives in and outside of the fire hall. He says, quick rant. The arson of Catholic churches is a strong message toward an institution that must be held accountable. The Morinville church fire, however, shows how dangerous these arsons can be. The first responders, nearby residents in a seniors lodge, the potential loss of nearby places of business. This all places first responders, including firefighters and residents, in danger of injury or death and has a huge economic impact on the community. This is an unacceptable response to an emotional situation and must be stopped. That from Lauren, a Real Talker and one of our audience members. We talked about this yesterday. Boy, was it ever a powerful comment from Captain Paul Watson when we talked to him about this, the founder of Sea Shepherd. I asked him, I said, by the way, I mean, when it comes to civil disobedience, and when it comes to, and I know how, political leaders, certain ones in particular, would respond to this, and they would not be wrong. They would not be wrong to say that's arson. Arson is in the criminal code. This is a property that belongs to a faith institution. This is a house of worship. This is sacred. This is that. And they would go on, and none of these points would be wrong. And I, as a talk show host, certainly cannot go on a public platform and start talking about how it's okay to burn down buildings and to burn down churches. You just can't. It's the same reason you don't put the name and address up of a convicted pedophile or sex offender and sick the masses on them. Although you may very well want to do exactly that. You just don't. You can't condone that sort of a vigilante approach to it. But what you sure as hell can do is have a conversation about trauma and grief and fury and anger and symbolism and institutions and the patriarchy and racism and the human emotional response to all of these things. We can talk about that all day long. And Captain Watson yesterday talking about, arson aimed at totem poles a century or so ago, I thought was a powerful and poignant moment. You can find that interview. I recommend it on our podcast. Thanks to those of you that subscribe and that rate our podcast. That'll be the full interview that you'll see. Unfortunately, due to my error yesterday on our YouTube version of that interview, we had to pull out a big, huge chunk because there were some video highlights there that we did not have the license to use, though we did credit the provider of that video. Still, our bad, my bad decision. So our YouTube from yesterday's show only will show a portion of that interview. I recommend the podcast interview. Powerful stuff from Captain Paul Watson. You can let me know how you're feeling about anything that you hear here on the show. As mentioned, sometimes, like this email from Lauren I just got about the church fire, that's up to the minute. That's happening right now. Lauren emails us. We can get it live on the show. Sometimes I understand you're going to walk with things a little bit. You know, maybe you're hearing this podcast while you're walking the dog, or you're laying in the shade, or maybe this is, July 15th that you're hearing this. We still want to hear from you to talk at ryanjesperson.com. We check our emails on computers that are provided by the team at Westworld Computers. They've been with us since day one, ensuring that our studio is resourced in the way that it needs to be. The show moves fast, so must our horsepower. So the iPads and the MacBook Pros and the iMacs and the iPhones and everything else that's in here from the team, it's been providing great customer service, sales obviously as well, for more than 40 years. Still family owned at Westworld Computers. They'll ship anywhere in Canada. You can check out more details about ordering online or booking your service appointment at westworld.ca. Wanted to remind you that the team at Grand Dog Essentials, well, they have a special role with us here on the show, because we feed our family members, our furry four-legged family members, food, quality raw food from Grand Dog Essentials. As you can see, they deliver weekly to Metro Calgary and Edmonton areas, Central Alberta as well. You can find out more information on their team of nutritionists and what they can do for your pup's health by visiting granddog.ca. The promo code REALTALK will get you 10% off your first time order. We also wanted to remind you that the team at Campers Village has their summer sale on right now. And at Campers Village, that means that you can save up to 40% on the top outdoor gear on the market. It runs through till July 11th, so you've got just less than 2 weeks left. But why wait? You wouldn't want your favorite stuff from Icebreaker and Mountain Hardwear and Yeti and Osprey and Patagonia and the North Face and everybody else. You want it to sell out, would you? With 40% off, these deals aren't going to last forever. You can equip yourself to get outside by visiting campers-village.com. And of course, a little later on in today's show, we're going to be getting outside, so to speak, with our friends at Tourism Jasper. That's coming up. This next segment is a spin-off. I love how this stuff works. Sarah Hoyles, what was it? Guys, it was a short time ago. We started we were talking about the digital when it comes to like the digital undertaker. And Sharon Hartung, who joined us on June 22nd. And it was fascinating because we started talking about, I thought it was just going to be a conversation about what happens to our Twitter account or what happens.
Which I found very interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting, wasn't it? But our online footprint, whether that's like banking or our LinkedIn or those types of things, what happens when we die? And that's what I thought that I think I had really sort of narrowed. I needed to broaden my scope of what Sharon Hartung as a digital undertaker is all about. But that conversation blew the doors off what we're about to get into here. Mm-hmm. This is really neat.
Yeah, really it's about facing death and kind of all of its implications. It's scary for some folks. It's a relief for others. It's a bit of both for others. So the suggestion was death doulas. And I had never heard of such a thing. Or end of life doula, depending on how you refer to yourself.
Yeah.
And it's helping with that transition. So sure, we've got our digital undertaker to do the Twitters and the Facebooks,
to handle the to-do list, the details.
That's right. But then to actually do the transition yourself, if it's end of life, or if it's someone that you love, helping with that transition.
So then we start talking about, we go death doulas. I didn't realize that death doulas were a thing. And then we start going, okay, but hang on. But what if we got like a doula, like a birth doula and a death doula?
A doula duel.
And we were going to plan a doula duel. And then we found out that there's such thing as a postpartum doula. And so our Friday roundtable on a Wednesday today, our Real Talk roundtable welcomes, I'm so looking forward to this conversation with Shannon Sproule, Sonya Duffee, and Tracy Chalmers. So here's the deal, okay? So Sonya Duffee is the founder of Full Circle Birth Collective and Postpartum Care in Edmonton, Alberta. She's a labor and postpartum doula. who has attended, get this, more than 1,000 births. Shannon Sproule has been a postpartum doula for the last 5 years and has served dozens of families in the Edmonton area. She's an expert in perinatal mental health. And Tracy Chalmers is out of Vancouver this morning, an end-of-life doula. Her work encourages conversations around acknowledging and engaging with death. I am so grateful at the wide, think of the perspectives we're going to get on this. This is going to be amazing. Shannon, why don't we begin with you? Welcome to the show. You're the doula business. You're a guide in a sense. You're a beacon in a way. You're a counselor. What drew you to this? Is this more a calling than a job?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Absolutely. It's a very passionate piece of my life. What called me to it was my own experience in the postpartum. After I had my son, I struggled with some postpartum anxiety. And once I was able to seek some support from my medical professionals and peers, recognized that the gap in the system was quite significant when it came to supporting postpartum families. And so I started to seek out if I could support in some way. And I was very fortunate to cross paths with Sonya, who is a facilitator for an organization that trains doulas. And so I took a training about, just over 5 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, I guess. And then, that was kind of the start of the journey, and it kind of just took off from there. Yeah,
I really appreciate when people describe their careers as journeys, because I really feel that they are that way, and there are so many parallels. Sonya, what drew you to it? Do you describe yourself as a labor doula, a birth doula? What do you say?
I usually use the term labor doula. Yeah. And for me, it just, birth is such a powerful time. It's such a intimate, raw, primal experience. And I think that as doulas, like being able to witness that and to support and care is a huge part of that, again, I'll say journey into parenthood.
Now, Tracy, Shannon and Sonya's work, now I'll acknowledge there can be complications, and I'll acknowledge there can be heartbreak around pregnancies as well. I mean, our family has experienced it personally. It's not always, but it is often wonderful. Death can have beautiful angles to it in a way, celebrations of life and legacies and things like that. But your calling's a little bit different, isn't it? As a death doula, what a fascinating line of work.
Yeah, and it absolutely is a calling. I love that word. And I find in the courses I facilitate, that comes up on the first day when people talk about why they're there. They're like, I just feel so called to this work. And it's more like a ministry sort of. And I really feel called to the work because I just see a huge opportunity for reducing suffering at end of life. Our culture provides us with such a skewed narrative around what death is. It's so embedded with fear, and great heartache, and great heartache is absolutely there. And there's so much grief to catch up with as one approaches death and after. But there's just so much more to the story. And I've had the honor of being with people, companioning is the word I like to use, at that very intimate time. And there's so much beauty, and there's the potential for so much connection and so much meaning and love, like the purest love. And, it's definitely a world of boths. And I really feel like the other side of the narrative needs to be heard. And we need this more balanced narrative to allow us to live into and to die into. So I see a huge opportunity for these conversations and for acknowledging the full narrative around death.
So Tracy, we're seeing there your website. If people want to connect with you, they can check out endwell.ca. So who hires you? Who reaches out to you? What prompts people to reach out to you? Is it people that have just, I don't know why I immediately think of the person that is relatively young and they've just received a devastating diagnosis, and they just don't even know where to start and they're trying to process it. But you must see 1,000 different scenarios.
Yeah. there's really 2 points that people would reach out and look for help from a death doula. The first is perfectly healthy people that really want to engage in end-of-life planning. And so there's a process that is called advanced care planning, where people are encouraged to consider what makes life worth living, consider their values, consider end-of-life wishes, and then appoint a representative legally to be their voice if they cannot speak for themselves, and have conversations with this person and their friends and family. So this process of advanced care planning is something that all Canadians are encouraged to do. Many are well-intentioned and really want to do this planning, but very few actually reach out and get it done. The stats are pretty dismally low. I think it's around 10% of Canadians actually have this planning in place. So that's one touch point. And then, as you mentioned, the other point that people reach out to me is after a terminal diagnosis. And usually it's a mix of people that have the diagnosis, but most times it's families actually, where there's this sense of overwhelm and this need for additional support. So
amazing. I will circle back to that because I have like 35 questions for all three of you. So I don't know. We're going to run up against the clock here. By the way, may I also encourage all three of you to treat this as though we're out for coffee. So if you want to jump in or comment on something another one has said, because I would imagine, like Sonya, I mean, there's probably, there's obviously one major difference between the work that a labor doula and a death doula or an end-of-life doula would do. I mean, the bookends of life, the exact opposite ends of the spectrum. But at the same time, as Tracy speaks, are you hearing similarities with the types of people that reach out or the reasons people reach out in some cases, and maybe even the work that you do?
Oh, definitely. I think there's this need for a more intimate experience, no matter how it unfolds. And as a labor doula, there has been moments, obviously, that we are celebrating and welcoming life, but also the passage of a passing or stillbirth or whatnot as well. And so it really is supporting families through all of that. It's a huge part of what we do really is supporting the
Sonya, we're getting some. I hate to interrupt. Something technical going on. If you want to maybe just even lose the earplugs, unplug, and just go with the computer mic so we can better hear you. So Shannon, are you hearing with regards to what Sonya is saying? I'm trying to determine what's the main, like, with regards to a labor doula and a postpartum doula. Would somebody hire both? How does that work, or where's the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. So a labor doula focuses a lot on the pregnancy and the birthing, the labor and birth itself. A postpartum doula generally comes in shortly after the birth has occurred and supports a family 6 to 12 weeks, sometimes beyond that, as they transition with a new family member. So often new parents, it just kind of helps. I say I'm a personal Google for people because I kind of take out the noise when people are looking for answers or looking for just seeking advice and things like that. And so, there's a bit of a grieving period in the postpartum too. Families are grieving their previous life often before having a baby, to then having a newborn, and everything that they kind of had as their baseline has completely shifted. So it's kind of just an opportunity for us to walk through that with them and allow them to have those feelings and allow them to go through the experience in a raw kind of, primal way, without any kind of judgment. And just allows that piece to move forward. You must,
all three of you, but Shannon, I'll ask you, I'll just ask the same question to all three of you, but Shannon, you must get, I would imagine, people that have given birth are experiencing some emotions that you cannot possibly forecast or brace yourself for. Postpartum depression is very much a real and common thing that impacts people. I think a lot of times parents, I don't know if I say more so moms than dads. I don't know. I know as a dad, it can be kind of tough and like in the first few months, because you're not really needed as much and you're kind of there to do what you can, but there's so much on mom. In these circumstances, you must get phone calls from people 3 a.m, babies screaming. They feel like they're doing something wrong. You must get people, you get these supercharged phone calls, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never really know what I'm walking into when I'm walking into a shift. I can do a check-in on my way there, but generally I walk in and I kind of don't. Sometimes it's a calm experience. Sometimes it's not so much. And just, to throw statistics out, in Canada, currently it's, reported 1 in 5 mothers or birthing persons have some form of postpartum mood disorder, 1 in 7 men. And that's, again, reported. I would suspect that those numbers are actually probably higher. It's a very raw situation. A birthing experience can be very traumatic at times or very triggering. I find parenthood also brings up a lot of feelings of the parent's childhood. They kind of have to sit with however they've been raised, and that kind of really comes to the surface. And so there's a lot of conversation and a lot of walking through kind of what that looks like. And then part of my role is to guide those people to the proper resources to get extra support. I'm not a medical provider. I can't diagnose anything. But I am able to see red flags and be able to say, let's get you some more support with somebody who is more trained or more specialized in this situation.
Okay, so let me put this one in front of Sonya, because this is a confession. And I mean, no disrespect. I mean, no offense, but actually quite a few of my friends, I'm just going to tell you the truth because the show's called Real Talk. Many of my friends have hired doulas, and I've always been like, gutsy move. Like, what if something goes sideways? Like, I'm a son of a physician, right? So I would like to have, I would like our birth room to have like 8 IC, like NICU nurses, and I want to have 3 emergency surgeons. And is there kind of a changing understanding of how doulas coexist or work with other health professionals? Do you understand the question I'm trying to ask?
Totally. No, we actually bridge the gaps that exist in the medical system, and we're there for that emotional support. So in the midst of things unfolding in a birth, say an unexpected event or scenario plays out, we're there with the family to support them emotionally through this experience and to ensure that they are getting the information that they need, that they know what their options are, that they know the questions to ask, and really supporting that. So we don't ever replace any medical staff, by all means. That's not our role or our scope of practice, but we're there to fill in those areas, especially the emotional aspects and the physical aspects of, what kinds of positions might be helpful for labor progression, or making sure that partners feel comfortable being involved in birth and holding that space to allow that intimacy to unfold between the both of them in a very public setting at times for people.
Tracy, this is how much did your I don't know why I'm double clutching on this question. I just feel like it just feels like a powder keg question, because this is really serious business. Medical assistance in dying is what I'm talking about, and I'm talking about how I facilitated so many conversations about it. I understand some people have real problems with medical assistance in dying, and I understand a lot of people credit legislation and accessibility to MAID for allowing their loved ones to experience a dignified and pain-free death. I feel like I've heard it all. How much has your business or your calling changed since Canada has made medical assistance in dying more accessible?
Yeah, it's absolutely impacted what I do. And just especially in the last year, the legislation is older than that. But in the last year, I've seen a real increase in the amount of people. I think there's more stories, there's more experiences of people that have accessed MAID and as an end-of-life option. And it's really about the people that approach me that have considered this and are applying for it. Really, my role in that case is really serving as these other women have so beautifully talked about, the idea of holding space for everything that comes up. So it is a very polarized, there's a lot of big feelings around medical assistance in dying. And it's a very difficult thing for people to navigate. I think people that choose it are pioneers in a sense. There's not a lot of people that have gone before them. So, and I just, I can't imagine what it would be like to consider such an enormous decision at a time in your life when you're feeling so terrible physically and so much is up emotionally. So it's complicated. And again, modern medicine has, they've nailed it. They have looked after the medical side of things. The reason why the three of us do what we do is because we support the emotional and spiritual side of these liminal spaces, sacred liminal spaces. So really my role in that is providing resources. Most local government websites have excellent information, or even the Canadian website has the national information on medical assistance in dying. And so just pointing them in the right direction and holding space for all the big feelings that come up, and really encouraging communication, facilitating conversations with those closest to people that are making this choice. So they're supported by their people. Those are the types of things I found myself doing when people approach me, wanting to know more about medical assistance in dying.
Tracy, what's something that one of the things that you help people with, counsel people with, educate people on that most people might not expect? What's something that you do that in the context of someone's end of life journey that might be a bit of an aha moment for many of our audience members when you mention it right now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the stories. Like, I really think that people are really surprised when they learn what normal dying is. We see it in movies, we hear about it in media. I mean, I have a lot of boys and they all play video games that, just have an insane amount of violence and death. It's all this fear-based narrative. I think when people realize, and I think it's interesting that we're all here today, birth and death doulas and postpartum doulas, and I was considering, like, what are the similarities? And I think when people really realize that normal dying, and I think it's important to acknowledge the dying that I'm talking about is a privileged dying. So it's the deaths are expected, there's support, there's care, and that there's many people on the planet that will not have this kind of generous, loving care as they die. And this has been made apparent in the last year by COVID. And many people will die alone and addicted, and no one there to notice they're gone. And my husband's a first responder, and so I hear a lot of this at our dinner table conversations. And so, the dying I'm talking about is different than that. But I think, if we can compare birth and death, like, I would, we welcome in birth, and we know the expected outcome of labor. But there's also a very natural way that the body shuts down, and the body was designed to die. And I think when you start talking about death, which doesn't always happen because our narratives are usually medical narratives that are all about getting better. But if you can actually talk about what dying is, there are these progressive stages, like a pattern that ends in an anticipated outcome. And having given birth a number of times myself, and obviously I haven't died, so this is fool's advice, but I would argue that death is likely more dignified and comfortable than birth in many cases. So I think when people realize that it is predictable, and there's certain physical signs that happen in a natural death. People get sleepier, they eat less. There's this gradual withdrawal, and there's a gradual withdrawal emotionally too, that people sort of cocoon inwards. And there's spiritual changes that happen, deep questioning, this dark night of the soul, and having visions or experiences. And, I think when we can tell people this, they just go, oh, okay. And they think, oh, well, that's how my aunt died, but I just thought that was different. So I think people would be really surprised to hear how a lot of deaths are gentle and predictable, and are opportunities for deep healing and connection and meaning making and love.
You probably get this often, Tracy, like, as you're speaking. First of all, I can see Shannon and Sonya are like connecting in big ways with what you're saying. And trust me, I have a ton of questions for you. And I want to talk about carrying people's emotions and processing the job. And I mean, geez, even Tracy, with you sharing, your husband, a first responder. I mean, a first responder and a death doula around a kitchen table, probably like, I don't know how much small talk there is. Maybe you need a little more. But in all seriousness, and I want to ask you about working with people of faith versus whatever you'd call those without, agnostic, your agnostic clients or people that are on that journey. I mean, so much to talk about. We'll be back with our doulas in just one quick second. I want to remind you that these conversations are possible because we have an amazing team of Real Talk builders. They're on this journey with us, the journey of this show, to ensure that we can continue to talk about things that matter in life, things with substance, and that includes the team at Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge. They're huge on family time. They're a family-owned business, and they know that this is the time of year where families are looking to get outside and enjoy the great outdoors. So whether that means a new Ram 2500 to pull your ski boat, or whether that means the Jeep Grand Cherokee or Grand Wagoneer to get the family out into the backcountry, maybe your favorite Crown camping spot, do it in a Jeep or a Ram truck from Sherwood and St. Albert Dodge. You can find them online, check out their inventory, and remember, 2 dealerships working together means more choices for you at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. The teams at Dairy Queen are ready for you this long weekend over these next few days, this heat wave. Nothing's better than a peanut butter parfait, a blizzard, a dilly bar. I'm absolutely torturing the team right now. We have none of these in studio. My most sincere apologies. If you're looking for something off the grill, they've got 2 cheeseburgers for $5, 2 double cheeseburgers for $7, or like I pointed out, a quad for $14. No, that's a quad for $7. It's an octo for $14. An octo. Can you call it the animal burger maybe? Can we steal that from...
Aren't all burgers animal burgers? I mean, except anyway.
Oh, Sarah Hoyles. Get your animal burger. At the Dairy Queens, they're like, Jasper, can you please get people to stick to the menu? Do you mind asking people to please stick to the menu? At the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, Y Gardens, and Baseline Road? No problem. I'm loving this conversation with our doulas. Shannon Sproule is a postpartum doula. You can check out what she does at yegppdoula.com. Sonya Duffee, a labor doula at fullcirclebirthcollective.com. And Tracy Chalmers, an end-of-life doula or a death doula at endwell.ca. Shannon, how do you process? May I ask a personal question? I mean, what you no doubt carry for people, some of the stress, some of the uncertainty, some of the emotional. The word baggage sounds negative, but I don't mean it that way. But the emotional weight that you would carry as a result of walking with people on their journeys. How do you do it? How do you process it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's something that has probably changed over my years of doing it. Personal boundaries is a big one, really making sure that I'm setting those. And, when I leave my shift or my job, that I am leaving it where it is. I do a lot of, grounding activities before and after talking to clients. So I'm only in the headspace and holding that space for them. So I'm fully present for them. And then I can be fully present for my family or whatever else when I'm not in those spaces. But it's been a learning curve. And there are times in heavier situations where you're dealing with trauma or with just hard birth outcomes that can be very heavy to carry. And it's part of the job. I'm very fortunate that I have an extremely supportive team that I work with that I can debrief with. I've got an incredibly supportive husband and family, tons of friends who are willing to let me process and talk if I need to. And so, it kind of just day by day goes. I'm well connected. I feel very fortunate for that.
This is it's interesting really to think of how things have changed when it comes to the options that people have, Sonya, and when it comes to how families define what might be an ideal birth scenario or setting for them. And obviously things can change, and sometimes there might be an ambulance involved or whatever the case may be. But isn't it neat to see that things kind of trend back to more simplicity. Maybe we're the way it was like 500 years ago. It seems like, minus the medical technology, but more and more people, it seems, want to be welcoming a new family member at home. It seems like more and more, I'm hearing more about, maybe this is just anecdotal, but more water births. Where is your business, or where is the business of birth trending? What are some of the interesting things you're keeping an eye on?
Well, I don't know if water birth and home birth is actually a trending thing.
Okay.
It's been something that we've been doing, for a long time. I think that there is a more desire for an intimate experience, one that, people can feel that they have the people that they want around them, and they can feel safe in their space and just kind of do what they need to do through the process of birth and their immediate postpartum. And so having choice of care provider, it isn't available for everybody, unfortunately. There just isn't enough. There's a lot of barriers to people accessing the care. We only have a certain number of midwives to provide the service. And so it becomes really hard for people to get a midwife all the time, to have more options in birth. But I think the trend would be being a part of the process more, being a part of the decision-making process and such.
I should mention, this is really neat. If I understand correctly, Sonya and Shannon, you're both working together, leading a new nonprofit called the Birth Society. Is that right? This is providing sponsorships for underrepresented community members to be able to diversify not just the doula community, but also to offer subsidies to families. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I could speak to that. We started this about 2 years ago. We really recognized that the doula community it's not diverse overall. And the reality is that if someone's seeking a doula, they have the right to feel visibly represented by somebody. And so we made the decision to start working towards building a group, a nonprofit, to basically provide funding, find funding and provide funding. So underrepresented community members can take doula training so they can serve their communities. And because doula work is not a health service that's funded, a lot of families can't receive the support. And the reality is the families that often need doula support are ones who can't afford it. So if we can provide some kind of subsidies or, be able to provide that in some capacity and build the doula community to become more diverse and more actually truly representative of what our city looks like, it's going to become a better profession overall. And the communities that don't have that support are going to be better well connected. So we're looking at communities of newcomers and, people who don't speak English necessarily, don't know how to navigate the healthcare system. Indigenous Birth Alberta is already doing some phenomenal work in bringing birth work back to, what that culture looks like. And so, we're big sponsors and want to, work closely with them to make sure that we're funding their process and their projects so they can reclaim what they want to do.
And so, so if we're acknowledging here, like just to say it, that basically it's like doulas are for the most part white, and it's mostly white people that have been able to hire doulas. Which I find interesting. I don't find that part interesting. I think that there have been major barriers to access to health services across the spectrum for millennia. That's not what I find interesting. But what I would imagine, and Tracy, maybe I'll come to you first on this one, but I would imagine in birth and death, the concept of, it may have different names, but the tradition or the concept of a guide or a counselor through process of birth and death, there are probably cultural applications of that no matter where you are in the world. Are there? When it comes to birth and death counseling and tradition, I would imagine that every culture has its own application in a way.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. This isn't a new role. People are so shocked to hear, end of life doula, death doula. But there's always been people in communities that have been, whether they stepped into or just naturally, maybe that is just their natural gift, is to be comfortable in these liminal spaces and be able to show up in a supportive way during these wild times of birth and death. But these were normally people that were just naturally part of the village or the community. And really, it's just been in like the last just under 100 years that we've become so disconnected from birth and death. I'm sure we all have stories in our recent family history. I know I do, of all my relatives back in Alberta, living in that one room or, that big farmhouse. And when people were dying, they would often be brought down into the living room, and children would be present and see death as a natural part of life, and family and friends and community would care for their dying and be there when people were birthing as well. And, we've really become disconnected, and we outsource our care now. So people typically die behind closed doors in hospitals or hospices. Once people are dead, bodies are whisked off, and, funeral homes deal with bodies. And I think that, it's similar in the birthing realm. And it's really unfortunate because, if we don't honor our entire human experience, we can't live, I think, in right relationship to what's really important. So if we're not aware of death, if it's not part of our life, we really lose out. So yeah, I think it's really nice to see this community-led death care, people sort of wanting to be more involved, families, communities. I think it's a really healthy thing. And I think you can feel this hunger, people really wanting to get involved.
It's none of my business, Tracy. This is my subtle way of asking you to divulge whatever you like, but it's none of my business of what your belief system is, or whether or not you're a person of faith, as they say. But I'd be curious to know how the passing of someone who believes that they are going to meet their savior and join their family members that they've been missing for years, someone that lost their spouse 15 years ago. They believe in heaven. They believe in eternal life. That experience or perspective is going to be very different from somebody else who's also lived a beautiful, wonderful life, maybe also lost their spouse 15 years ago and now believes that the energy that, their body will give energy back to the earth, and perhaps a tree will rise above them. And there's so many different ways of processing what we do not know. But how do you approach it? If you have a client that is a person of very strong faith, and then you have a client that's an agnostic, and then you yourself personally reconciling all of this, that must just be, is it a real challenge, or how do you navigate that?
No, it's not a real challenge at all, because, like these, my panel members have said, it's all about me showing up grounded and open. It's this idea of holding space for whatever is there. And, if someone finds comfort in their traditional organized religion, then that's a plus. And I will say, isn't that amazing? That's so great that this comforts you. It can work the other way too. People that have been very, faith has been a big part of their lives, can really question, it's about to be tested, right? What actually happens when we die? So it's really about holding space for whatever is. I remember sitting with a man who was dying of ALS, and he was just such a bright mind. He was a professor here at a local university, and he loved to just sit and talk. And I remember him asking me point blank, he looked at me and he said, I don't believe that when I die, I'm going to have, 10,000 virgins. He goes, I don't believe that. And he looked at me and he said, what do you believe? And, honoring the doula spirit, it's not about me. Like I take off my cloak at the door and I walk into that space, just being present for what is. And I can't give him that comfort. What I can do is I can hold space for his concerns, for his wondering, for his anxiety. And, it's hard for us 21st century humans to understand that we don't always have to fix things. We don't always have to have the answers. We don't have to solve for these problems simply by witnessing people, by seeing people, by hearing people. It changes things. It absolutely changes things. So it was his process to go through. And even when asked point blank, I just looked him in the eye and I just said, my beliefs are very different from yours. And I think there was like a little twinkle and he got it. But, I can't, people have to go through their own process. And there's huge benefit for being there for people to do that and witnessing people. It absolutely changes things.
This is like an obvious statement, but there's just such in the rooms where all three of you practice, there's such energy, right? I mean, like how do you quantify or describe the energy when a new life enters a room? How do you quantify the energy that comes with a screaming child or an exasperated parent, or the joy or the highs and the lows that a postpartum doula might attempt to navigate, the stormy waters, maybe we call them, although I understand that's a little inherently negative. I don't mean to be. Many moments of joy too. And then the energy in a room when a life, I was so blessed to be with my grandfather when he passed. And it's like if I talk about it, I can start crying. I mean, just the energy in that room, and like calling my dad and telling him, and I just can't even, and everyone, I guarantee that everybody that's listening to this is picturing their own family members and thinking of their own experience in these conversations, right?
I think one of the things that I think we can all probably agree with is we really just meet the families and the people where they are, and the reality is that's different every time you see them. And just like my day varies day to day and what happens, it's the exact same thing when you're in these really raw, transformative moments in your life. And, I think that's part of our role, is to sit there and allow that space and those energies to move and flow and be okay with it, and acknowledge and give permission for it to be there, whether we have answers or not.
I love it. That feels like such a great way to end. Although I feel like, Sonya, I'm stepping on your toes. I feel like you have something to say. Sonya, you know what I want to do? Because Shannon and Sonya and Tracy, you've all been amazing and giving us your time and perspective. I'd really love to give you all a chance to sort of give us a last word, to wrap up a thought, maybe leave us with something here to consider. So, Sonya, why don't we go with you first?
Okay. Well, being a doula has been such an honor, to be present and to be there for families. And I think that sometimes people don't really understand all of the things that we do in what we do and how we do it. And, this is definitely, especially in my case as birth, is something that people remember for the rest of their lives. And I'm sure impactful in other ways as well. And it just helps to get them off onto a good start.
Tracy?
Oh boy. Well, I thank you so much for having me. I think that, these difficult conversations are hard to start, but they are absolutely life affirming. It's not a downer, and they're connecting conversations about death. I would hope that we can start talking to our kids about the cycle of life and birth and death. The forest is a great place to start. Just start changing these narratives and changing the culture. It really does reduce fear when we pull these things, out of the shadows and talk about them. And I guess I thought it would be fitting to end with a Francis Bacon quote that it says, "Natural to die as it is to be born."
Beautiful.
Beautiful. I love your idea of the forest. I love that this isn't age specific. I love that there's that recognition. Shannon, we'll give last word to you.
I think that the biggest thing is that, we all are born and we all will die. And so this is for everyone. And I agree. I think, involving children and all ages, like I always say, how do we make birth cool? Like, how do we make death cool? How do you make it something that we can talk about, because it is the most natural thing? And so if we have these conversations and we make space for it and space for, the guidance of it, we're just going to be a better society and a better community on a whole.
Yeah, such a great conversation. I'm really grateful to the three of you. I feel like you're three friends of mine. Shannon Sproule, Sonya Duffee, and Tracy Chalmers. You can find them all online. Just check out the tweet we've sent out earlier this morning about the show's lineup. Have a great weekend to the three of you. Enjoy the rest of your summer and keep up the amazing work, making a real difference in people's lives.
Thanks so much, Brian.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. What a conversation, Sarah Hoyles. Holy smokes. I feel like we could have had we could have done like you could have done 3 separate interviews, each of them for an hour with each of those people.
Yes, absolutely. I was kind of like, I battled with that.
Yeah,
I dueled with that.
You dueled with it because I mean, you could sit there, you could talk to Sonya the labor doula about, you would get, especially if we promoted it ahead of time, you get a bunch of people expecting. You notice the language, by the way, too. Parents, correcting, not moms and dads, even within our own family, a family that a beloved family celebrates Parents' Days, not Mother's Day, not Father's Day, but Parents' Days. It's beautiful. And then you could talk to Shannon, a postpartum doula, about, think of how many questions you'd get from audience members or anecdotes, people sharing their own stories, the journey of following the big day, that postpartum journey.
I love that. Like, what have we got ourselves into?
Oh, yeah.
Like after the little one is born.
I remember bringing Wyatt home from the hospital. And he's like, just this tiny human. And you're still in the car seat, right? This like infant car seat, which I've never driven so safely or more carefully in my life.
Yeah.
From the hospital to home. And then we put him down, and we have the big moment where Moses, the boxer, got to meet him.
Oh.
And Moses has been his best buddy. And although Monroe, when she came on the scene, the lab, now she's trying to take over. She's trying to be the best buddy. But regardless, and then so dog meets baby, and so there's that kind of very special moment. And then there's this silence. And then it's like,
now what?
Like, I guess I'll take out the garbage, or just
when
life.
When does Wyatt go home?
Yeah,
oh, wait a minute.
Life starts. It starts now. Here we go.
And that idea that it's like, these are all normal feelings.
Yeah.
I loved that about, getting being allowed, given permission to ask any question.
Totally.
And then to get validation, just to like, oh yeah, that's totally normal. Totally.
And then Tracy, the death doula.
Yeah.
I love she go to the forest, talk to your kids, remove these mysteries, and just fascinating stuff. Brenda says, short week, still so many great conversations on Real Talk. Brenda, thanks for being here for it. If you like what you're hearing here, then of course you can hit the like button on YouTube. You can give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. You can share the content so other people can be sure to check out these conversations themselves. If there's somebody that who wouldn't benefit from some of the conversations that we've been having this week? We appreciate those of you that share our content. Every Wednesday, we're so proud to partner with the team at Tourism Jasper to feature MyJasper Memories. And it's really catching on. It's catching on because each and every single week, more and more of you are sharing your Jasper memories with us. I absolutely love this one. We were talking about camping last week. If you've missed any of our past features, you just go to jasper.travel/realtalk. The hashtags are MyJasper and Real Talk RJ. And that's where this one came in. We want to lead off with this. This is absolutely beautiful. This is from Philip Turnbull. Philip says, it doesn't get much better than canoe camping on Moline Lake. Hashtag MyJasper, hashtag Real Talk RJ. Check out these photos. These are unbelievable. Are you kidding me? Every single time. Look at that, Spirit Island. These are amazing. Something tells me that Philip knows his way around a camera. Look at this photographer, unbelievable stuff. Sam, we're just going to steal these for our computer backgrounds, I think?
Yeah, I'm drooling.
For our desktop backgrounds.
This one's my favorite.
I feel like I can, and I know with apologies to those of you on the podcast, you can find MyJasper Memories, of course, on our YouTube page. This one, I feel like I can hear this photo. You know what I mean? I feel like I can hear the water lapping up against that canoe.
And Philip has actually been on our show.
What?
Yeah, he was the advocate for Alberta parks. We talked about the Kananaskis
What?
Pass.
That's that guy?
That's Philip.
Oh, my goodness. The credibility just deepens and deepens and deepens.
Fantastic photographer.
Love it. I wonder if Philip will take on this assignment like everybody else, because in this week's MyJasper Memory, we're taking a look at the history of Jasper, but here's the deal. Past meets present. This is a neat photo contest that Tourism Jasper is launching. If you think you have what it takes to recreate history, we're going to show you these photos in just a second. We want you to go to one of these 4 iconic Jasper locations, take a photo that mimics or recreates a historical image, and you could win a trip to the mountains. That's a 2-night stay at the Chateau Jasper, valid until the end of May 2022. Blackout dates, you can read about all the details online. So a modern version of one of these 4 archive photos, and then you read the details on the website of how you can submit it. Hashtag MyJasper, hashtag Real Talk RJ.
Sorry, this is a very selfish and important
question.
question.
You cannot win. No, you cannot win. Sam, our apologies. You also cannot win.
I was going to enter, but all right, that's fine.
Mostly because I plan on winning. No, okay, I can't win either. But let's take a look at these. I'm a huge on archive photos. We have archive photos all over. Look at this. Are you kidding me? You know where this is? You want to go recreate that photo? We'd love to see it. How about this one? Uh-huh. I've sat in Adirondack chairs observing that view before. What about this one? I love this. You know where that is. If you know, you know. And this one come on. This takes you right back. These archive, these are amazing. Every picture just tells such a beautiful story out in Jasper. Recreate it, and you could win a trip to the mountains. Check out jasper.travel/realtalk for more. And don't forget, we would love to see your Jasper memories. Hashtag MyJasper and Real Talk RJ. Thanks to the team at Tourism Jasper. Beautiful stuff. So we're talking earlier today about numbers, and the show kind of got into high gear and we started moving. But I was telling you this morning that I woke up and I saw that there were numbers trending, and for the most part, the numbers that have been trending have been these heartbreaking ones, right? Kamloops Indian Residential School, right? The 215, this number rocks the nation. 751, right? Cowessess First Nation, Saskatchewan, rocks the nation. But then I saw this other number trending, and I realized very quickly that it had nothing to do with the story of reconciliation. It was a number. It was a decimal point that jumped out at me, and that's when I went, okay, hang on a second. Wait, it's temperature. And I said, no way, you got to be kidding me. 49.6, the number 49.6 was trending internationally. And it still is across Canada as we speak, as we record this show, as we record this podcast on this June 30th morning. Writes climatologist Scott Duncan. Let me fact check that. Professional meteorologist, rather, Scott Duncan. I didn't think it was possible, not in my lifetime anyway. 49.6 degrees Celsius in Canada. That's, for our American friends, 121 degrees Fahrenheit. Scott says this is the story of the Canadian heat record that was crushed on 3 consecutive days, get this, by an unfathomable margin of 4.6 degrees Celsius, more than 8 degrees Fahrenheit. He says this moment will be talked about for centuries. As you can see, this was in Lytton, British Columbia. Lytton, British Columbia established 3 national temperature records on 3 consecutive days, as mentioned, by an unfathomable margin of 4.6 degrees Celsius. The previously held record was in the province of Saskatchewan, city of Saskatoon, in the 1930s, to give you a sense of how long those records have stood.
Fair enough. He said it's going to be talked about for centuries, but I'm like, until the next record is broken, and we're seeing like consecutive breaking of records all over the map with our quote-unquote heat dome.
Can I just say that I was excited that a professional meteorologist that is pointing out that the temperature hit nearly 50 degrees, an all-time Canadian heat record in Lytton, Canada, describing the fact that he believes that this will be talked about for centuries gives me faith and optimism that he believes that humans will be here for centuries. Unless he means that the AI will be talking about it centuries from now, because we've all created an environment that is totally unsustainable for human life.
Yeah, I'm with that one.
And we laugh, so we don't cry. This was an interesting map that I saw as well. Sam, do you mind popping that one up that shows the southern U.S.? You know the one that I'm talking about. This was from another. This was from a climatologist. You can find them online. It was at Climatologist 49 was the source of this. This is a map showing historically places in the U.S. or Canada that have ever been as warm as Lytton, BC. Ever. I mean, in recorded history anyway. Now, we don't say North America because I suspect that the map of Mexico would probably have a whole bunch of markers there. But as you can see, only Southern California, Nevada, Arizona, and it looks to be one incident in New Mexico. Those are the only places in the United States or Canada that have ever seen a temperature of 49.6 Celsius or higher.
It's astonishing.
Yeah.
I just think of the animals that cannot get out of the heat, or people that are houseless. Like, they cannot get out of the heat.
I've seen a ton of people on social media, and it doesn't matter where you're listening from. It doesn't matter where you're watching from. You can do this in your community. People donating like en masse big, cases or crates of bottles of water to inner city agencies and things like that. And I don't know about you, or like Sam, when you're out walking, the pup, or maybe you're even managing that different because you've got a long hair pup. But I've noticed when we were out there, people are putting like salad bowls, like I'm talking big aluminum bowls of water out at the end of their sidewalks. People are just being it seems like more considerate, more courteous. Have you been seeing it?
Yeah, I've definitely come across a few just sort of like place bowls when I'm walking. I've been trying to keep walks till like late at night after the sun goes down, or sometimes really early in the morning. Hilariously, Sophie still lays in the sun all day. I don't know why. She goes outside. She has like one shady spot that she kind of goes in and out of, and then she like naps in the sun, and I don't get it. But
Golden Retriever, right?
Yeah, Golden Retriever Husky.
Golden Retriever. Oh, wow. She's got a coat on her.
Oh, yeah.
A fur coat.
A fur coat.
In the dead of summer.
Yeah. We've got some short hairs here. So this is like a little bit, maybe a bit of a different scenario. That we've got the kiddie pool in the backyard that they spend a lot of time in.
She won't go in a kiddie pool. She'll drink out of it, but she won't go in it.
She won't go in it.
She's not a water dog.
Interesting.
Yeah, my dog, I'm tempted in renaming him. His name is Ranger, and I've thought that maybe I need to rename him as Wade.
Oh, he just goes up to his knees?
He will not. He was like, I cannot convince him that dogs can swim. He doesn't believe it. I've used treats. I've put a life jacket on him and tried to like haul him out. I've used toys, nothing. One thing that I did notice, a friend of mine put a bowl out with water in it, with rocks in it. And she said, for the bees and butterflies. So then, because when you leave a glass out, like you'll come back and there's dead bugs in it.
Yeah.
But if you put rocks in it, it'll allow them to get hydrated and not die in the process. So, and I've also been filling up my baby pool, the baby pool that was for the dog that he won't use, and putting rocks in it for birds. I'm just like, I cannot imagine, where are they getting water right? I guess there's the river in our city, but but we're landlocked.
Yeah. These types of are we guilty of do we make absolutely everything so serious all the time? We do, but sometimes stuff's serious business. I don't know. It's like you guys real talkers. It's like the three of you. You guys probably can't even just talk about like enjoying a patio or enjoying a sunny day. All of a sudden you have to turn it into income inequity. But I'm serious. I guess I'm making a joke about the fact that I can't ever joke about things. In real life, all I do is joke about stuff. But I saw, for example, the other day, and I retweeted it. There's this guy, Mark Charrington, that does amazing work in our city. He's he's just a guy. I mean, he does have a job, but he just helps people. He's a guy who just helps people. And he showed a photo of there's a dad. He's a single dad. He's doing his best that he can. You can see it. I retweeted it. And his little guy has some health challenges, and the heat exacerbates the health challenges and makes them worse. And the dad wants a little apartment air conditioning unit, but on his age, his assured income, his government, it's a pittance. He can't afford air conditioning. He's just like, hey, does somebody out there have an extra apartment air conditioner? And I was like, that's one example of how this is so different. I sit here and think, it's so hot. Our air conditioning's been just cranked this week. There's a lot of people that don't just walk over and crank the air conditioning. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's why we're here. Maybe we're here just to put little things on people's radar. Say, hey, while you enjoy this, or while you're doing this, maybe think of this too. Just made me think of the heat waves. Made me think. It's obviously got your brain churning too.
Listening to the reports of deaths, heat-related deaths in BC is astonishing. That first responders are being run off their feet. I was listening, and it was a 2-hour wait for ambulance response. So
can you imagine?
That's really scary.
Yeah, it's really scary. It is. So think of others. This is what we do. I feel like there's this community here, and I know that everyone you can think of ways to. Maybe that means going to check on the neighbor. Maybe there's an elderly neighbor that you're not necessarily sure if they have everything they need or whatever it is. Just a wellness check on your fellow humans over these next number of days. If you want to think bigger picture, if you're pursuing your organization is allyship or inclusion, I want you to check out powered.ca right now. That's POWERED. It's Power Ed by Athabasca University. They've got a new microcourse on allyship and inclusion. And this is really great all the way through. This is your last day to sign up for it at a discounted rate. By the way, a 10% discount using the promo code REALTALK10 on embracing allyship and inclusion. It takes about 6 to 8 hours to complete, and it gets you pointed in the right direction. If you as an individual or your organization wants to better understand what allyship looks like, you want to better facilitate or manifest a spirit of inclusion in your workplace, Power Ed is a great place to start. RealTalk10, the promo code at powered.ca. We also want to remind you, we know that so many of you are going to be out in your outdoor spaces, and maybe it means if you're like me, you're looking around going, that could be better, that could look better, I sure wish that could get redone, but when am I going to do this? And and I don't have the skill or the knowledge to do it. Go to landscapeedmonton.ca. Mike and the team at Eden Landscaping for more than 20 years have been earning the trust and return business of their clients as they bring your outdoor space to life. More than 20 years of on-the-ground experience working with ultra-modern homes in fields. What about those homes? Those homes where curb appeal is the difference between the house that's for sale 3 doors down and the house for sale just around the corner. Eden Landscaping could help your house sell weeks before the others, and you're going to get your investment back. Landscapeedmonton.ca is where you'll find them. If you're going to be hitting the grill this weekend, flexing your muscles and your license to grill, why not make sure that you've got Alberta products on that grill, from Alberta grown fresh produce through to Alberta proteins, including some wonderful vegan and vegetarian options. Friesen Brothers has you covered. Plus, they've got BC Cherries province-wide right now. There's 16 stores. BC Cherries are the best in the world, and supporting local, supporting Canadian is huge for Friesen Brothers. You'll find them in 16 Alberta communities, including that beautiful brand new store in South Edmonton. Friesen Brothers is Alberta-grown and Alberta-owned. And we want to remind you that the team at Local Waste, when we talk about family-owned business, these guys have been rolling out waste management solutions for their partners, their clients, and their customers for more than a quarter century. Family-owned the entire time. Integrity matters to them, and that's why they have a transparent business process with all of their customers. They tell you, if you don't feel like the deal's working, they want to find a solution. And if you're locked in a contract with one of their competitors and you just want out, Local Waste will provide the resources to get you out of that contract. You can call Mikkel, Lauren, or Chris. You'll find all the details at localwaste.ca. Each and every week on our final day of our broadcast week, this week it's a Wednesday, the team at Local Waste also gives us an opportunity to get things off our chest. It's a little something we like to call Trash Talk. All right, Maurice kicks us off this week, says, honestly, how hard is it to refill the ice tray after you dump it out? Yes, family members who are probably watching right now, I am using our favorite program, Real Talk, to speak directly to you through Ryan Jesperson's mouth. This happens every time you empty the ice tray, but you don't take the 5 seconds to fill it up again with water. And then here's old Maurice. It's 38 degrees outside, working up a bit of a sweat to get some yard work done so everybody can relax together on July 1st, and the freaking ice tray empty. I don't leave empty toilet paper rolls on the dispenser. I don't leave empty cereal boxes in the pantry. I don't return your Jeep with the gas tank empty. And I sure as heck don't leave you with an empty ice tray in the middle of a record-smashing heat wave. That's just cold, says Maurice. Nicely played. This one from Gerald Logan, who says, in 2020, the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board delivered an annual return of 12.1%. AIMCO delivered a return of 2.5%. Can we please talk about this? If we create an Alberta pension plan, I will opt out. This is also why ATRF needs to be given back to the board. AIMCO's a failure, even to my amateur investor eyes. That from Gerald. How about this one from Sharon, who says, imagine you had a bang-up summer backyard barbecue party planned, and then your neighbor suddenly lost one of their loved ones, and there was grief and funeral arrangements next door. A raucous party with fireworks and face paint might not be the most tasteful thing to do. If you cared about your neighbor, you'd probably bring over casseroles and provide support. Then imagine you found out it was your grandparents who caused the death of their loved one. What would you do then? Even more inappropriate to hold your party. Then you found out that your grandparents caused the death of the loved one in order to provide you with the house that you live in. Now what do? Canceling the party is the bare minimum of showing respect. That from Sharon. How about this one from Devin, who says, with these latest discoveries, we reflect on our country's history and look inward at our own viewpoints, but I'm wondering when it's time to go directly after the Catholic Church and the actual priests and nuns who actually perpetrated these abuses. From my perspective, says Devin, it appears as though there were serial rapists and possibly murderers running rampant in these schools. How else do you process the math on the unmarked graves? He says, I'm talking about something along the lines of the Nuremberg trials. We need to hold these bastards accountable. He says, while the red paint and the church burnings are clearly describing how victims feel, I think a few gallows may be appropriate as well. That from Devin. And we'll wrap up with an email from Ronnie, who says, fireworks exploding over dead children? Talk about shameful. I'm looking at you, Calgary and Edmonton. Put down your Canada Day pancakes and listen. Consider the families, children, lives annihilated in the creation of this country. Celebrating Canada Day celebrates colonization, oppression, and genocide against Indigenous peoples. When we shoot off fireworks and get all party hardy, we fail to acknowledge this genocide and that it's ongoing. Don't let me hear you talk about your disappointment. That's privilege. This isn't cancel culture. This is a reimagining. And if not now, then when? St. Albert's reimagining. So is Fredericton and Victoria, BC. Don't even think of claiming you're an ally if you support fireworks. That's just your performance. That from Ronnie. You can send us an email to trashtalkanytimetalk@ryanjesperson.com is where it's at. No matter what you do tomorrow, we're eager for your perspective, and we'll be back at it live next Monday, July 5th at 8:30 Mountain Time. We'll talk to you then, everybody. See you soon.